Be careful what you wish for. We expand on old words of wisdom in tonight's preamble. I first want to address the liberal biased press. For years, the Chris Salcedo Show has been warning that your unfair treatment of Republicans and conservatives and your looking the other way on socialist Democrat malfeasance and treachery would come back to bite you. In the last election cycle, you people in the socialist press, you bashed, you lied about, and you hounded arguably the most transparent president in American history, President Trump. Every time I turned around, the president was talking with one of you shrubs, giving you exclusive interviews. It infuriated me. I couldn't fathom why Trump would devote so much of his valuable time to a press that committed themselves to delivering for my and Trump's political enemies, the socialists. Trump's conduct with the press was a stark contrast to President Obama. Obama used the awesome power of the federal government, remember, to spy on and charge members of the alleged free press. Obama, after promising to be the most transparent administration in history, blah, 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 he turned out to be one of the most secretive, according to the Washington Post's media columnist, Margaret Sullivan. But as I've said before, the majority of the press are dedicated Democrats, not dedicated journalists. And now, the efforts of you people in the press have led to this.
And some of my discussions have brought up media literacy because that is a part of what happened here. We're going to have to figure out how we rein in our media environment so that you can't just spew disinformation and misinformation.
The leader of the squad is now promising to rein in you folks in the press. Now, many of you will dutifully comply, willing to sell out your country and the American people so you can keep a job spewing state-approved propaganda. Now, one can hardly blame you. Many Americans would do the same thing to protect their families, keep a roof over their head, and food on the table. Countless left-wing governments have seized control over their media using the same tactics on display by collectivists in Congress. But it didn't have to be this way. You people in the press could have exposed these socialists, told the truth about them when you had the chance. You could have lived up to the vision of the founders, what they saw when they set apart the free press, the only job articulated in the Constitution as being essential to keeping America free. But you, led by men like Chris Wallace, Chuck Todd, and Chris Cuomo, you blew it. Now, whatever's left of the free press will disappear in short order, just as it has done for centuries when free countries have fallen to collectivist thought. The next group I want to address is the GOP. In particular, I'd like to address Liz Cheney, Adam Kissinger, Fred Upton, and the rest of you folks in the Gang of 10 who voted to impeach President Trump. In the last 48 hours, we as a nation have learned some things. For days after January 6th, the aforementioned press, even Fox News, and government officials assured Americans that BLM and Antifa were nowhere near that riot in the U.S. Capitol. Yesterday, a Utah man, John Earl Sullivan, was arrested. He is an Antifa and BLM activist who has appeared on CNN. I wonder how many more of these Democrat militants were present on that day. Catherine Herridge of CBS News, one of the few remaining journalists left in America, reported that the timeline for the riot didn't exactly match up with Liz Cheney and Nancy Pelosi's impeachment narrative. Turns out pipe bombs were placed at the DNC and RNC, and the breach of the Capitol was well underway long before President Trump finished his speech. Herridge's reporting is buttressed by the FBI finally admitting that they had intelligence that says the Capitol Hill riot was pre-planned. Question: how can President Trump be responsible for inciting the riot at the Capitol when it looks like it was pre-planned and that the attack was underway long before President Trump finished speaking? Perhaps that's why Nancy Pelosi didn't include specific language used by the president that supposedly spurred the riot, because he said nothing that caused that riot. Now, We expect Pelosi and her merry band of Marxists, we expect them to lie. That's what left-wingers do. But you wouldn't expect Liz Cheney to make such a buffoonish vote without having all the facts. Although I gotta say, whenever I think buffoon these days, Adam Kissinger's name leaps right to the top of my head. Perhaps the Gang of 10 should have waited until they had all the facts before lodging their vote of vengeance against President Trump. I don't know, silly me. But Adam, Liz, and Fred, well, they couldn't wait to throw in with the socialists. Now, here's their reward.
So the first step is impeach and remove, which is also about ensuring that he cannot be, so that he is barred from running for public office again. The second is to expel those members who have aided and abetted and been complicit in the cruelty, the corruption, and the criminality of this administration, who perpetuated the big lie.
Did you guys catch that? Presley wants to tie every Republican to the false narrative it's looking like of the Capitol attack as a mechanism to toss out GOP members who worked with or supported their president. This is, of course, criminalizing being a Republican. And Liz Cheney and Adam Kissinger and Fred Upton, well, they couldn't wait to turn over power to these lying totalitarians. Don't worry, Liz. I'm sure you're going to survive the first purge. After all, the Democrats and CNN, they love your kind of Republican. Lastly, I want to address the American people. You're watching an attempt by the socialists to impeach and remove President Trump based on his inciting violence that's turning out he didn't incite. Consider this.
Some of the success that we've been able to achieve around criminal justice reform would not have happened in recent years were it not for Black Lives Matter. And the intensity and the brilliance of that movement that forced at least that there would be some counterforce to the status quo, which is so reluctant for change, if not hostile to change. They're not going to stop. They're not going to stop. And this is a movement, I'm telling you, they're not going to stop. And everyone beware, because they're not going to stop. They're not going to stop before Election Day in November, and they're not going to stop after Election Day. And that should be, everyone should take note of that on both levels, that they're not going to let up, and they should not.
That was Kamala Harris, Biden's pick for VP. As Antifa terrorists and BLM thugs were burning, looting, beating, and killing their way through America's streets, there was Harris, Senator Harris, cheering them on and saying the violence should continue. But there was nobody proposing treating Harris in the same manner that Trump is being treated. Nobody is advocating that Pelosi, Presley, or Maxine Waters, or any other Democrat socialist who actually did cheer on the violence that dominated 2020, the same unfair way President Trump is being treated. I'm hoping we, the people, learn the lessons that the press and the 10 wayward Republicans didn't learn. I'm hoping we can all see the double standard that is in the process of being imposed on our nation. Socialists can do whatever the hell they want, and the GOP and conservatives must be prosecuted, silenced, and penalized based on completely fabricated charges. The American people should learn this lesson, and they should learn it fast, because the leftists are coming for all of us next.
You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.